Hello everyone, welcome back to Parts Talk. I have another feature article for you today, but first, before we begin, please hit that like button for more content and remember to subscribe so you will be notified when I drop another episode. A friendly reminder that I may be the only program that takes you beyond the sales department, consistently that is. Others focus specifically on their cars, their performances, looks, style, features, and DIY videos from mechanics. This is not about bashing the industry. There's good and there's bad. I focus on trying to make the industry become a better one, especially the bad ones. And here's another fun scenario. Just recently I was having a conversation with some friends discussing the Formula One circuit. Congrats to all the drivers and their team who keep us entertained on the edge of our seats, and it's great competition, I must say. And I place emphasis on team because when you watch the races carefully, I place close attention to when they enter the pit and how their crews work so fast to get them back on the track in under 10 seconds, of course. These drivers, Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Sergio Perez, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, etc., among others, they cannot be successful without their pit crews, who are all mechanics. Well, most of them. So the article I'm going to be featured for you today is entitled Dealership Consolidation Happening at a Stunning Place in Canada. This was printed on August 6, 2018, and it's by Donna Flavel from Automotive News Canada, right? And I'm going to be reading through some of this while sharing my points, of course. And as you can see, it's a lengthy article, but we will go a little more in depth while picking out the salient points. Well, in order to get the salient points, I must read most of it. So it begins that more than half of all new vehicle sales in Canada are controlled by large auto dealership groups that own dozens of locations and sell a multitude of brands, a trend that's expected to accelerate as more single store owners exit the industry, experts say. It's stunning. Dennis DeRosiers, president of DeRosiers Automotive Consultants Limited, said that there's a rapid change of the ownership structure. More than half of all new vehicle sales in Canada, 58%, were handled by group-owned franchised stores in 2017, according to data compiled by his Richmond Hill research and consulting companies. So he has the data to back it up. More than 58%, almost 60%. So that is a big chunk of the market held by dealership groups. And he said that's up from 9% in sales in 2000, as the number of ownership groups with at least 5 stores exploded from 27 that year to 121 in 2017, the Rosier's data showed. So the analytical data is actually there to substantiate that more of these large corporations are buying up all the smaller ones, right? So cross-border deals such as Edmonton-based Auto Canada's blockbuster $110 million purchase of US-based Grossinger Auto Group are also on the rise, while demand for dealership acquisitions remains strong this year, especially among smaller regional chains that own 3 to 7 stores, he said. And I must add, at the time of reading this article, Auto Canada acquired more dealerships over the years, with one recent acquisition of 11 Ontario car dealerships from AutoPoint Group. So Auto Canada operates 78 franchise dealerships, including 28 brands in 8 provinces in Canada alone, as well as a group in Illinois. That is a stunning achievement by this group, and they continue to do more. So buyers continue to outnumber sellers, with some strong auto brands in ideal locations receiving multiple offers. And whenever a group wants to enter a particular market, instead of going up from a greenfield acquisition, starting from scratch, that is, they'll just buy someone else who's already established in the market. It only makes sense. But more sellers are entering the market this year as single store operators entering their third or even fourth generation look to the future and see a lot of uncertainty and change. Dealerships, on the other hand, remember that the first generation builds right? And then they pass it down to the second generation. But I'm going to place emphasis a little more down the line. I'm going to leave the link for this article down in the description box so you can go through it in detail for yourself. I continue. More than 1,000 individual dealer owners have opted to sell in the past decade, most of them to ownership groups, the Rosier says. Last year alone, 128 dealerships changed hands, with less than a handful remaining owner-operated, he said. Some of the biggest groups like Edmonton-based Auto Canada and Toronto's Delare Auto Group own more than 60 franchised showrooms offering dozens of brands across multiple provinces. And they're not alone. I can tell you, I'm originally from Jamaica, and I can tell you for a fact there's around 3 auto dealership groups, 3 families that owned approximately 95-96% of all the dealership brands in the entire island, believe it or not. Let me continue by saying, but many are smaller regional players with about half a dozen stores in cities such as Barrie, Windsor, Kitchener, and London, Ontario, for an appetite for more. This is based in Canada, as we pointed out earlier. This article is specifically addressing Canada, specifically Ontario. It goes on, the initial targets were the biggest dealers in the country. Now you're starting to see the secondary, tertiary dealers get gobbled up by the big groups as the number of big stores becomes scarcer and scarcer. Money, and it's always about the money. Money is the driving trend towards group ownership, he said, noting that the cost of meeting automakers' rising demands for glossy showrooms has skyrocketed. In 2000, the average dealer borrowed $4.5 million to make capital improvements to his or her store. Last year, that figure had tripled to nearly $16 million, citing commercial lending figures. So, in order to maintain the image and the aesthetics and to make everything look like an established, well-oiled machine on the outside, these owners and principal have to fork out big bucks in order to maintain the aesthetics of the company. And it is a demand from the manufacturers themselves. They're always upgrading. So a lot of capital expenditure has to be spent on then trying to maintain sales and operations and pay staff and training and selling, and the list goes on. And it is a headache while adhering to government controls, policies, and regulations as well. Let me read you another fun fact. According to the National Automobile Dealers Association consultant Glenn Mercer, predicted the number of U.S. dealerships, and this is in the U.S. of course, will drop to about 16,500 in 2025 from 18,000 in 2016. He also said in late 2016 that the number of dealers would fall to 6,500 owners by 2025 from about 8,000 in 2016. The article is by the Automotive News, and it advised dealers to either plan for your future or plan to crash out. I will leave the link in the description below so you can read further more on it. So once there's a potential in increasing the UIO, especially in some regions and some market, then there's always going to be a chance to invest by these big dealerships. And a lot of these smaller players in the market, they simply can't go up to the expenditory budgetary cost that some of the manufacturers are inflicting on them, right? I go on here and I continue. A single owner operator relying on personal assets as guarantees may get uncomfortable with that, says Chuck Seguin, president of Seguin Advisory Services in Toronto. Sorry if I massacred your name, my accent is deep. So basically what they're saying is that I'm regurgitating everything over and over and over. They simply don't have the money to maintain the processes and the policies as required by these big manufacturers. Okay, let me continue. The average owner operator is now in his or her 60s, yes, and they're looking for retirement. They're just basically tired because the competition is really, really high. And even if he or she has kids who are interested in the business, he or she might think twice about saddling them with this kind of debt. To borrow $4.5 million to make capital improvements, it is a big risk. And it says that figure had tripled to nearly 16 million. If you go up further, I'm quoting what was stated earlier in the article. That is a lot of money to put onto someone, especially someone new. It's like leaving your house as a legacy to your kids, not knowing that once the house goes up in value, then your children will be liable for the debt, the taxes on that appreciation amount. So the same goes here. Record sales. It says the past several years have been good to auto dealers. Rising consumer confidence has pushed the Canadian new vehicle sales to new highs, crossing the 2 million mark in 2017 for the first time. So while vehicle sales are up, and there's no demand for vehicles as we speak because of the pandemic, of course, lots are running short on the amount of cars. A lot of people are now turning to used car. The used car market is now hot again, and due in fact to the emphasis on chip shortage and all that going on about. So you see, a lot of the things that were discussed in the past, they're actually bearing fruit now, right? Let me continue. Rising consumer confidence has pushed Canadian new vehicle sales to new highs, crossing the 2 million mark in 2017 for the first time, and this article was from 2018. So the automobile retail industry is immensely profitable right now. So people want to get into it, and the people who are in it want to expand and grow. But if they want to expand and grow, why are so many people opting out? Owners are opting out, mechanics are opting out, parts people are opting out. It's as if the environment itself has become toxic because it's all about the profits. So let me go on. With banks eager to lend and interest rates at historic low, more money is available to finance acquisitions. And there you have it. Banks are willing to invest into the dealership environment. However, it doesn't seem like the best way to want to go. And when I mentioned earlier that first generation bills, it's actually a quote. In the parts circle, in the parts department, we always discuss these things amongst ourselves, and we usually say first generation builds, second generation ruins it, and in the third generation sell. All you need, so we always say all you need to do is to go back to basics, benchmarking, best practices, succession planning, and that seems to be a thing of the past. Okay, let me continue so I can finish up this article. Cross-border sales also are becoming more common, with Canadian groups taking advantage of the lower US valuations, which help offset the higher cost of paying in US dollars, said Erin Kerrigan, managing director of Kerrigan Advisors. And Kerrigan advised Auto Canada's takeover Target Grossinger Auto Group of Normal, Illinois in March, as well as the Oregon-based Wilson, Toyota, and Subaru, which was bought by Toronto's Alpha Auto Group in June. So they're doing the cross-border acquisitions as we speak because they're seeing the potential in the market. And of course, the North American market is one of the biggest markets in the world where new car sales are concerned. So of course, they're going to go after it. So there's a number of factors involved. Kerrigan reviewed the consolidation trend as a natural progression of events. Few businesses remain family-owned beyond the third generation. As I stated earlier, the third generation sells. Adding that many are looking down the road and seeing big chances in the way consumers will buy and own cars. And I mentioned that in articles further on. As time progresses and people are staying home, everything now is at the touch of a button. I did a video recently with the Dilari group has a video out encouraging people they can stay from the comfort of their own home or on their phones in their car anywhere and purchase a car from their showroom by the click of a few buttons. That's how easy it is. So you can look at the cars, the specs, match, and then you can apply for credit right there. You will be notified whether your credit has been approved, what the rates are and everything, and then then you'll be able to transfer from your bank to that information, and then the sales rep will get in touch with you, and then they do the finalize everything all over the phone. Of course, you have DocuSign and all these other platforms that allow you to do your signatures right there over the screen and have everything finalized, consolidated, and then it's just, where the technology is going right now, if you don't get on board, you're going to be left behind. All of this change discussion is accelerating some of the consolidation that will naturally be occurring in our industry, and I just expanded on that. Either they want to be a part of that change or they just want to get out, because a lot of these change, especially where the technology is concerned, it is driving a massive paradigm shift to how people do business. Okay, let me move on here. Investor or interest. Private equity, high net worth investors are also getting into the action, giving dealers looking to buy an alternative look to bank financing and debt, she added. So other groups she's talking about are all these large financial conglomerates who are offering interest and loans and capital investments to persons who are willing to get into the industry. Dealership valuations are closely guarded secret. Well, of course, nobody's going to want to disclose their financials. Okay, let me go on. But a rough rule of thumb is 8 to 10 times earnings before taxes, depreciation, and amortization for a luxury brand such as Mercedes or a popular import such as Toyota, and roughly half that for a domestic brand such as General Motors or Chrysler. So they're done based on the brand itself and what the brand can acquire. I know such a group who decided that they'll only do luxury brands because the return and the pricing and the margins are much more greater. But instead of a Toyota or something else which turns over a lot faster, the competition is high but the margins are low. So just a few more things to finish the article. In March, Auto Canada, the country's only publicly traded dealership group, paid $110 million for the Grosinger Auto Group, which was mentioned earlier, an 8-store chain in Illinois. Let me go down and continue. But every deal is unique, said Samir Akavan, managing director of Templeton Marsh, an automotive mergers and acquisition advisory company in Toronto. So you have all these other companies also in the mix benefiting from these acquisitions and mergers and as consultancy. So there is a service for everyone within the industry. Individual operators can still make a very good living, industry expert says, especially if the family has deep pockets, for the dealership is located in a smaller, less competitive market, but they're getting fewer and farther in between. Let me read the sentence here. When I was a dealer, I painted the walls the color I want. If I wanted to change the carpet, I change it, says Akavan, who once owned a BMW store. He says, these days BMW says, we're changing the showroom floor tiles from gray number 12 to gray number 15. You look at the tiles, there's really no difference. And then they say you have to buy the tiles from here at $27 a tiles. And you think to yourself, didn't I just do this 4 years ago? To heck with this, I'm going to sell. And that's a perfect example right there. So sometimes it's a requirement by the manufacturers. Sometimes the first or the second generation, they reach to a point that they said, they can't bother deal with the stress, or they're not going to hand over the stress to their children, and then the children just decide that they're going to sell and say, you know what, the hell with this. And they usually don't sell everything. They sell majority of the shares. They'll sell like up to 80%, keep 20 or 30%, and then they'll collect royalties going forward. So they don't have to work. Everything is in, and they'll become a shareholder, and they still collect dividends year in, year out. That's how it is. So my take is that CEOs need to invest in themselves through keeping a pulse on what's going on around them, and also in other regions of the world, or they won't be selling so often. That being said, is that surprisingly not many of them know exactly what the absorption rate is, because as mentioned time and time again, anything at all that happens within the market, whether it's a global financial crisis or a natural disaster, the automotive sector is always hit first, and that also means specifically dealerships, because anything can affect the supply chain, and the supply chain directly affects them, whether it's containers. There's a shortage of containers, the ships are not going through because manufacturing plants are scattered all over the world. And even though they're scattered all over the world, they specifically manufacture those cars for specific regions. So you can't expect the plant in Thailand to start manufacturing vehicles for the United States when the plant in Thailand is supposed to be manufacturing vehicles stated for Australia or some other regions in the world. So there's always a pressure on the industry to achieve more Okay, and then with the just concluded pandemic, we also saw an uptick with small garages benefiting more, because as dealers closed their door and scaled back their staff members, and customers still wanted their cars to be serviced because people were traveling more in and around the country to go on vacations, to go on long trips, especially where flights were being delayed and flights were cancelled and everything. A person still wanted to get out there. They had to turn to small garages and use the used car industry to acquire their vehicles and to acquire service to their vehicles itself. So there has to be a defensive strategic mechanism amongst these dealers, right? They have to have contingencies in place at all times to look at when things were not supposed to be going the right way. They have to also have a 20-year strategic plan in place and stick to that plan. And that is how you actually run a dealership, through benchmarking and through best practices. What do you think? Thoughts, comments, let me know below. Remember to hit that like button on your way out. It only takes 1.5 seconds. So until next time, we'll talk.